and Grandpa. Let's wander back into the past, then paint me the picture of long ago.
Welcome back to Hill Farms. We're up to 47. That's about when Uncle Bus came back from the South Pacific. So somewhere 46, 47, give or take. So not exactly the type of cruise that one wants to go on. He was gone for quite a few years, as many Americans were. So he comes back and he's going to try to pick up the pieces of the life that he left behind, as so many guys had to try to do and move forward. So times were a little better, I'd say, at that point of the country's history, coming off the war.
Well, at that time, Uncle Bus went into a business with his uncle over in Weisport in the lumber business. It was Q.U. Lesher's Lumber. And he was working there at the time as a partner in that business. And he also had this tree farm going. So now he was just to the point where he was going to have a nice harvest, particularly of these Douglas fir. You know, at first when he had the Douglas fir, although it was a beautiful tree, people were reluctant to try it.
Why?
They didn't know if it would hold its needles. They didn't know anything about the tree. Nobody in the East here knew anything about this Douglas fir tree. And he had to even go to gas stations and beg them to put a couple on consignment.
So he really had to build the market.
He had to build the market.
Even though there was a tree market, there wasn't one for that.
It didn't take
variety.
long, because after one taste of them, people
So what
really
did he do? He would go around and...
well, he did it first, then he started getting wholesale people that got interested.
But when he first started the first trees, he actually went around...
yeah, he went around to some of the gas stations that were selling trees.
Put them there
and
on
some local tree lots
consignment,
and
did what he had to do to get them to try.
yeah, they had on consignment, yeah, where they didn't sell them, he had to take them back.
Well, then how long did it take until the worm turned?
Only a year.
So
when
1
people
year's
got
time.
a taste of, when they got a taste of the tree, it was altogether different.
So it didn't take long.
It didn't take long, no.
So then at that point, he probably was feeling pretty good about.
Well, he was. He had a nice crop of Douglas fir ready to sell. And he had a guy that already bought him. Joe Gilbert was the man's name.
So this was the first crop of Douglas fir that he had to sell.
Right, the first crop he had to sell, and he had a good crop. And Joe came in, and I don't know how many he marked. It was a lot of trees. And of course, everything was set. They were going to cut them after Thanksgiving. Those days, the tree market was later. They didn't put trees up on Black Friday. People mostly put trees up right before Christmas.
Really, within a day or two before.
But anyway, Joe Gilbert came over to the lumber mill where he was working. He said, "Pfeiffer," he said, "what in the hell did you do with my trees?" So I said, "What are you talking about? What did I do with your trees?" He said, "You sell them to somebody else." Bus said, "No, I didn't sell them to anybody." Well, he said, "They're gone." So Bus said, with that, his heart just about dropped into his stomach. He said he quickly left and he come over here and he said, "Lord," he said, "here this whole big crop of Douglas fir were cut and gone." And what had happened was, a guy came in with a tractor trailer right in bright daylight. But you got to remember, there was no houses, there was nothing around here. It was isolated. The farmer was working in the field, and in fact, Marvin Mertz saw them. He saw the guys cutting. He thought, well, it's Pfeiffer cutting these trees. I mean, what would you expect in a guy did in bright daylight? He cut an entire tractor trailer load, or those fellows did. They went down past Mertz's farm. He saw them go. He said they had the whole trailer loaded, and they were all stolen trees. And then he decided he had better put up a cabin or something out here. But it was hard because there was the money they were depending on.
Oh, absolutely. That could have been the end right there.
Now he had to go to work and build a building here.
Imagine someone coming into your warehouse and stealing all your product out before you ever get to sell it. So what's really interesting, the side note to that is you think about that. So they had to come in here with a bunch of guys. Now, there was no chainsaws back then.
No,
there was no power saws. They were going to cut these trees by hand. Okay, they didn't wrap them up like we do today, which means they had to get them out of the field.
They spent the whole afternoon doing it.
Yeah.
It was a rainy afternoon.
But to give you an idea how isolated we were out here,
there was no cars on the road or anything.
There was one or two farmers that were around that might have seen what was going on, but people kept to themselves and figured
he thought it was
Pfeiffer.
He thought Pfeiffer was cutting his own trees.
This was all new, so
what would you think?
There's no precedent for this.
Yeah.
Sure, so that's easy to see where he...
Well, now they had to go to work and build a building if they wanted to stay in business, and that's another cost. They built a one-room cabin. In fact, I got the honor of staying in it at night, and it was a little scary. I'll tell you, I was only a high school kid, and they had bunk beds, and they had a gas light. Yeah, I had an outhouse for the toilet, and there was no running water in the thing. It was a little bit of Scary thing for a young guy to be in at night, although I did have a loaded shotgun. You know, Uncle Bus always provided a gun.
Well, that was the time.
And thievery was a problem, really, from that time all the way up into the 80s.
Well, part of the problem is there wasn't an active police force like we have today.
Well, that was one of the problems.
So,
right?
you know, you didn't have to worry about a cop coming up on you. I mean, we were
No, they
fortunate
didn't.
from that standpoint. So that really made it that you had to defend
Right,
your crop.
and we had numerous incidents of confrontations with thieves. I mean, we had some pretty hairy things that took place, but
well, and Uncle Bus, the way he was, you knew he wasn't going to back down from anyone. You know, so going into with that,
well,
one
little story on that was one night I caught two guys stealing. 1 o'clock in the morning, I was sitting out and caught these guys stealing. Called the state police. And no sooner than he was done finishing that, Uncle Bus come through the door, because we had called him. He said, "What in the hell are they sitting here for?" He said, "Why didn't you shoot them?" And there's two cops are sitting there looking, you know. And he said, "You two guys are lucky I didn't catch you." He said, "You might not be sitting here." You know?
And he wasn't a young man at that point.
Oh, no.
But
No,
once again, he was that way to the very end.
Well, you know, you raise a crop and you put all that hard labor into it, and then when it's finally ready to harvest, somebody takes it. It's pretty tough to take. I mean,
and you know, you have to keep into perspective that once again, there wasn't a lot of people out here. So you're out here by yourself. It could be one guy, it could be 10 guys.
Well, yeah.
So you're out here. It's dark.
We had incidents where
you really needed to be able to defend yourself.
There was one of us with 5, 6 guys in the field, and they got some of the incidents were pretty rough.
There's no modern day police force, so you're on your own.
You were on your own.
You have a choice. You're going to either defend yourself or take a beating and lose your crop at the same time, which...
well, about this time, our local policeman, Mr. Bierman, he was beaten up by a couple guys. He didn't want to shoot with his gun, so he took a beating. The guys actually beat the cop, our East Penn Township cop at that time.
And once again, people have to realize, I mean, this is... I don't want to make it sound like it was the Wild West, but it kind of was, you had to defend yourself because they could have very easily turned around on you.
Oh, yes, it could have. People could have... They could have overpowered you and just beat you up and left you lay there, you know. I mean, nobody would have known who they were.
I mean, and today we don't need to do that kind of stuff because we do have an active police force, you know, so if there's a problem...
Well, we don't have that type of problem today like we had in those days. Those days they were buying the trees to resell them, or they were stealing them.
Yeah, a lot of times that's what people have to also realize. They weren't just stealing one tree, they were stealing, and we've had numerous instances where they stole...
If it would have been 1 or 2 trees, we would have ignored it. We did have one guy, maybe I should mention him yet, and we had a guy called the Hatchet Man, and every year, the last day of deer season, this guy, we knew the area, he always cut a tree down. And we could tell it was him because he used to hatch it, he hacked it off. And we were determined to catch this guy, and you know, in all the years, we never did catch that guy. He got his tree, we sat out and waited for him and everything else. That year he didn't come.
Yeah, we figured he was a doe hunter. And,
probably.
He was scouting us out in the woods and picked the most opportune time to do it. So.
He'd always do it right around the time he knew we were going in to eat.
Yeah.
You know, right after dark.
So I think we're gonna cut it at this point here. Now at this point, you know, Joe Gerhardt had passed away. Uncle Bus was getting older, and you know, we're moving into the 50s, and Uncle Bus needed help here on the farm. So that's when he decided that he was going to look to bring in a new partner, I guess. It didn't start out that way, it was as a helper, but we'll get into...
He had one real reliable man that was with him from the beginning, a man by the name of Jimmy Benninger. And he was an excellent worker, and he was with Uncle Bus from the very beginning until he died.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about Jimmy because he was an important part of the farm. But we'll talk about also really how the next generation got their opportunity to get involved. So once again, if you like what you're seeing here, subscribe to our channel and follow along. It's a pretty interesting story. We'll see you again. We hope you enjoy our series, The History of Hill Farms. If you have any questions about anything that you've seen in the video, please post a question in the comments section and we'll try to get back to you. Also, if there's anything you'd like to see in future episodes, please let us know. Thanks a lot.
Grandpa, tell me about the good old days.